Hi, I'm Kristen. I'm a counselor, and I'm going to talk today about inviting God into your pain. And I don't know if that for you is loneliness, it could be isolation, it could be a betrayal, it could be illness, it could be separation, it could be the loss of someone you've loved, could be someone else's choices that have hurt you, or it could be the choices of your own making. But the reason I chose this topic to talk to you about is because in this imperfect world, we're all going to experience pain. And people are imperfect. And so we are going to get hurt. And so I think it's a relevant topic. I think that we all can point to something that has created pain. And some of us may be in a season of pain that feels unbearable right now. And we're looking for answers and we're desperate. And I think inviting God into our pain is where we can start to begin to be on the road to healing. The reason that I feel like this topic is really important is several years ago, I was devastated by something in my own life, something that was completely out of my control, something that I had not asked for and had never thought would happen to me. That's something, whether it's the world has dealt you a really tough blow or someone has made a choice that has ended up devastating you. But I was in a place where I felt hopeless and I felt helpless, and I needed some guidance on how to begin my healing. This particular event in my life and these circumstances shook my reality. They hurt and devastated my children. Our community was affected by this. And I began to question, what is wrong with me? What have I done wrong? Am I being punished? Is my family being punished? And most importantly, I thought, where is God in all of this? This person, this God that we think is so good, where was he in my circumstances? And I think that's what pain does. I think it calls us to question our very reality. It calls us to question this, where is God in all of this? And how can I recover from this? When I started sharing my story of my own pain, I started seeing women come out of the shadows with similar stories of pain, similar questions, similar feelings of desperation and hopelessness and isolation. I started to realize that it was triggering things from my childhood about being rejected and being left alone. As you sit across from me today, I don't know the nature or the story exactly of your pain, but I do know how deep of a wound it can leave. And I do understand loneliness, and I understand hopelessness and the rage and injustice that one can feel when faced with something so life altering or devastating, and really believe that inviting God into your story, that healing can begin to take place. I think that any good story that we read, whether it's our favorite movie or our favorite story, I think is born out of pain. It's in the pain that we learn and that we grow and that we're shaped and redefined. I want to first explain what I thought and how I thought this would go for me. I prayed. I did whatever I thought I could do, and I waited and I expected my miracle. I expected complete restoration of my family. I expected a fairy tale ending that would be told for generations to come in my family. I expected my boys to be able to witness forgiveness and love in action, and I was ready to receive this. Um, I had a feeling, or I desired greatly to get a rescue from my pain. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that feeling, but it's that desire to want to be rescued out of something. When it didn't happen right away, I prayed harder, and I tried to control my circumstances. I tried to control others in my life that were clearly out of my control. I wanted my old life back so badly, and I would have done anything to get it. When it became clear that wasn't going to happen and I wasn't going to get that, um, what I sensed God revealing was that He didn't necessarily desire to rescue me from my circumstances. He desired to meet me and rescue me in my circumstances. Um, and I'm going to say something that might be really hard for you to hear right now. It's really hard for me to say, but the temporary relief from our pain may not be what God has in mind. Instead, He may be calling to you to begin to walk a journey of healing and restoration that is in no way temporary and in no way quick, but it is a journey. In that journey, for me, He began to reveal unhealthy and unhelpful thoughts and beliefs that I had been wearing not well, and I had been acting out and really buying into that was beginning to shape who I was and who I thought God was. And you may be here today because God is calling you out of the shadows to start recognizing maybe what are those things? What are those lies that I've been believing that have contributed to my pain? One of my favorite C.S. Lewis quotes, which I use all the time, is, and I'm going to read it because I don't want to get it wrong. Pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pain. It's a megaphone to rouse a deaf world. So that to me just speaks to God's, when we're in pain, we can no longer ignore that. God maybe had been whispering to you in things in areas of your life that had been working well. And when we become in a place of devastation and pain, it's like God is shouting to us to lift up our eyes, to find that healing and that restoration. So there are so many ineffective ways that we can go about receiving that temporary pain relief. Um, I think about some really unhealthy coping skills that we tend to gravitate toward just to get that temporary relief: drugs and alcohol, diving into relationships when we're not healthy, denying the reality of our situation, trying to ignore it, trying to deny our feelings, not examining some of those lies that we've bought into, I think are all ways that we temporarily run away from our pain. The problem is they are just temporary, and our pain will still be there when we wake up in the morning. And I think that is why I think inviting God in is calling us to a deeper journey to really get some resolution and some healing. So, here are some lessons that I learned while going through this painful season in my life. And I tried to make it um, kind of easy by making them all P words like pain. So, we'll see. But it's perspective, patient endurance, purpose, and point of view. So I'll start with perspective. I had a happy family. I had a nice house. I had an awesome backyard, dogs, barbecues, friends. I had all these wonderful things. This life that we had built was perfect to me. And it was exactly as I would have chosen it to be. And I don't want you to get me wrong. Those things are good things. They're wonderful things. They are absolutely wonderful things. Um, but they were things that I was allowing to define me. And until they were all gone, I didn't realize that I had a problem on my hands. I had placed all my worth, all my security, all my value on these things and my roles that these things played in my life. Um, when they were gone, I no longer thought I was worthy. I no longer felt lovable. I was aimless in my purpose. My identity was so wrapped up in these things that I didn't know how to even function in this new reality that I was living in. Um, I had forgotten that God had created me to be His daughter, and that I was still of worth and I was still of value, and my source of security did not come from these external things that are all good things and important things and things that I had very much valued, but were not a measure of my worth. People are imperfect, as I said earlier. Our bodies fail us. We lose people. Accidents happen. Pain is just not avoidable. And so this a shift in my perspective is what I needed to see happen. I had to recognize that my worth could not be taken away from me, and it was not defined by these other things. No one's lies, no one's betrayal, no person's offense against me or anything that I had done and was still carrying around with me should or could ever change the way God sees me. The second thing I learned was patient endurance. I learned to wait on God's timing, not my timing. I learned to wait that there were so many things that were out of my control that at some point I just had to throw my hands up and give up in certain areas. One of my favorite verses in the Bible is in Isaiah 40:31, and it says, "Those who wait on the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar with wings like eagles. They will run and not be weary. They'll walk and not faint." And I don't know about your season of pain, but walking can often be a challenge. Getting up and doing the next thing can sometimes be a challenge. And I'm a runner ish. And so for me, I knew if I could just get out there and run, I'd feel better, but I couldn't. I didn't have the physical strength to even get up and run. Um, I was so exhausted at the end of the day from the emotional toll this was taking on me and my new responsibilities in my new normal that I couldn't even do those things. There was a period of time that I had to wait and just rest. So, in the waiting period where I was taking some time to rest, I believe that God was revealing to me some of the lies that I had begun to fall victim to, the thoughts and beliefs that I held that I had let define me. He was giving me back my strength, and patiently enduring it was building character in me, and it was changing me in the process. My third point is that through all of this, I was beginning to find a purpose, not only a purpose for myself, but a purpose for the pain. There were many nights that I was often unable to sleep. So I could fall asleep fine, I was exhausted, but I would get up in the middle of the night, and that's when I was alone. And so, in the midst of the most difficult part of this, I would get up in the middle of the night and read through the Psalms because I didn't know what else to do. And I came across Psalm 56:8, and it says, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." And I thought, God must have a really great sense of humor because there is no bottle big enough on this earth to carry the amount of tears that I cried. And I'm sure you can relate to that. Um, mine have got to be in a dumpster in a warehouse with a fancy logging system to keep track of all these tears. But the point was, he's keeping track. He hadn't forgotten my offenses that were committed against me. He saw them. He cared enough to keep track of them, and he cared enough to keep track of my sorrows and my tears. So every tear that, whether it gently falls down your cheek or soaks your pillow at night, he's aware of it and he knows. And he's calling you to let him in on that and let him be a part of that weeping process and that healing process. It's kind of like God's the ultimate recycler before it was even like a thing. He will recycle and repurpose those tears. I know that there were so many times he was saying, I don't know how I'm going to use this ugly cry, Kristen, but I'm going to. And I'm going to use it for your good. And I'm going to use it for those around you who are with you in this and who are watching you go through this. Um, when we invite him in to hold our sorrows, as he's promised he'll do, and our tears, he will help restore us and help us use it for good. Part of, I think, what happens in the process of inviting God into our pain and experiencing this pain is some growing and changing. I think evaluating our point of view about ourselves and God just sort of naturally begins to happen. I spent a lot of time, like I said earlier, trying to figure out what I had done wrong. Had I made God mad? Did I not pray well enough? Had I done something wrong to cause this? For sure, I must be getting punished. He wanted this to happen. God doesn't want me to be happy. He doesn't even know what would make me happy. He's not watching out for my kids. This is not the best thing for me. Um, I must not be worthy of being loved and respected and cherished by someone who made that promise, or by God for that matter. What stands in the way of us inviting God into pain? Whether that's a belief about he's a punishing God, I'm not worthy, he doesn't care about me enough, my pain's really insignificant. It could be an experience that you've had with people of the church. Perhaps you growing up or in your adult life have experienced a harsh word or something that's been very judgmental that's turned you away from understanding God to be grace giving and inviting and accepting. That maybe there's just a lot of fear and a lot of just unknown there based on a past experience that you've had that has been damaging in your ability to reach out to God. So, for example, believing that we're not worthy, or believing that because someone else threw us away, we are worth being thrown away. And I think that it can keep us from rising up to be who we're meant to be. It can keep us from recognizing our potential. It can keep us from recognizing our worth. It could also lead us to make some decisions that we may regret. Like, I'm going to prove I am of worth, and I'm going to go figure out how to do that, and then go and make decisions that are unhealthy and are not going to end in us feeling valued. And I want to explore this idea a little bit more. Are our feelings that are rooted in a faulty belief about ourselves or about God driving us to respond in a way that's unhealthy or unhelpful? And I think that this can happen often without us even knowing it. I think we aren't even aware, or these ideas that we have picked up along the way are so ingrained and they act like fact that in effect they could be inaccurate and very unhealthy, and we are responding to them as if they're true for us and as if they're a fact for us. It's important to take time to dissect these things, and you can do that on your own, whether it's in journaling or even having a professional counselor help you through that. Someone to sit with you and really dissect some of your thoughts on who you are and who you believe God to be in your life. Let me give you an example. So, if there's a fear and a hesitancy about taking this before God, about inviting God into your pain, if there's a mistrust there, rather than a desire to lean into God, um, I challenge you to evaluate that and to consider, who do you believe God to be? Do you believe his promises that he, like he said, is in control and working things out for your good? Or do you believe that ultimately God doesn't care about your insignificant pain, that you're really not worth a second look, that you're not worth any kind of healing and restoration? And given what you base your beliefs on, will be how you are triggered to feel and then ultimately respond. And a second example of that, a message that you received as a child that was reinforced as a teenager and then ingrained as a woman, that I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy of others' love and respect, and certainly God couldn't love me. Um, and if that's our belief, then it's likely that our feelings are going to be one of insignificance and of helplessness, of shame, of hopelessness, which in turn then will drive us to seek validation in really unhealthy ways, potentially, which then again just reaffirms our initial belief that we're not worthy. So I think we need to take a look at those beliefs that shape us. Are they fact and are they healthy? And if not, our point of view, our perspective needs to be challenged and reshaped. Oftentimes, I think if we are so detached from feeling like we know ourselves well because we're struggling with this pain, it really is helpful to go and talk to somebody who can have a different perspective, a counselor or a trusted friend who can have a different perspective and be able to see things in us maybe we're blinded to or we can't see, and be able to point those things out. Like, tell me about what it was like for you as a girl. Tell me about your first experiences with God. Tell me about what you think about God. Tell me about what you know to be true about you. What were you told you were? Who were you told you were? And how, as you grew up, was that reinforced? How was that cut down? Those kind of things. So oftentimes, I think we have a hard time getting there on our own, but with help, I think it really can be impactful to take a look at those. I think inviting both people and God into our pain is an extremely vulnerable place. We're already vulnerable in our pain. So asking God to come in, there's a risk there. I think there's always a risk there. And inviting people into our pain is, are we going to be validated? Is it going to make the pain worse? Are we going to be exposed? Is this even going to get any better? So I think we have to acknowledge there is a bit of a risk there in inviting God into our pain or inviting people into our pain. And that's kind of why I said a couple times that people are imperfect and will let us down. Because even in my journey, that has happened with people who have tried to be there and have said the wrong thing at the wrong time, meaning well, but has wounded me even further. So I think the promise that God is a good God and a perfect God was reassuring to me, because I knew that what was happening was not going to wound me. They are risks worth taking because they set us on a road to healing, and they set us on a path to restoration that isn't possible otherwise. Otherwise, there's temporary masking that we talked about and temporary kind of coping mechanisms with our pain, but it's not authentic and it's not long lived generally. For me, instead of rejecting God's call for me to invite Him into my pain, I drew closer to Him. And in that, He began to reveal to me His true character, that He had so much grace and mercy for me to receive in those moments, that He knew my name and that He knew what had caused my hurt. And I believe that is true for you too. He knows your name and He knows what causes your pain. And He also knows what your mind is focusing on right now. And maybe that is something that needs to shift. And you may need some help with that. He stepped in a way for me when I knew I couldn't handle it anymore, when the pain had gotten to be too much and it wasn't something that I could deal with on my own anymore. I had been handling life on my own and been doing just fine up till that point, with a set of beliefs that had shaped me that were inaccurate. And I never would have known that had this experience not happened to me. We don't always know how much we need Him and how much we need to shift our perspective until something devastating happens to us. This also is where I got to see some wonderful things at work, like the love of friends, people showing up for me that really did have my back. I had my family stepping up and stepping in. I had gifts and support showing up in ways that I had not even communicated I needed, but they still showed up. And I think that was a way that God could use others in my pain, and they would have never had that chance to bless me had I not been in this circumstance. So I think there are things we can look for and bright spots that we can look for in this that God can use. And God has His hand on you. And I believe He is asking you He wants to hold your pain. The temporary relief from my pain was not at all what God had in mind. And this encounter with God in the midst of my pain started me on my journey of redefining and reshaping me. When I'm ready to take that risk, but still feeling like, what do I do? How do I do this? I think, examine your surroundings. Do you have people in your life that build you up, that support you, that you feel like you can be safe with? Um, and if you do, those would be the people that you would want to reach out to and just say, hey, can we have coffee? Can we talk? You could write a letter. You could write a letter to someone and just say, look, this is what I'm feeling, and put it out there if that feels less vulnerable. Sometimes I really think that God allows these seasons in our life where the only possible place to turn is to turn our eyes up toward Him, so He can meet us there and He can start placing those people in our life and start providing for us in those seasons. I know that I had friends on speed dial, and I would text my thoughts because I'm a verbal processor. I do all my processing out loud. So it wasn't good enough for me to just think it and process through it. I had to tell someone. So, and in the middle of the night, I didn't have that because I respected their boundaries. Although I did have some friends who said, "Go ahead," but I didn't always have that. And it was in those moments that I just really, it almost felt like stepping out of the box to just say, I'm all alone, God. Like I am all alone and I don't know what to say and I don't know what to do. I said, will you just meet me here a lot? The beauty shows up in the midst of the pain. And I think about the friends that showed up with gifts that I didn't even know, I hadn't even asked for, didn't know I would need. And then it turned out I really did need them. And they knew. It was like the supernatural showing up of people and of things, that really beauty does show up in the midst of pain. And also for me, therapy was a really important step. It was inviting someone else as well into that journey to help me look at what I had been assuming was the truth about me and the truth about God, and processing through some of those things. Journaling is also an important thing. I was just told the analogy recently of journaling is like dumping your purse. You don't sometimes, and I know this is true for me, I don't even know what's in my purse until it gets all dumped out. And so journaling is like dumping out the contents and sifting through them and sorting through them, or like cleaning out your kitchen sink and there's something smelly back there, you don't know what it is until you get it out. And sometimes that can be the same with journaling, is we really don't know what's what's inside until we get it out on paper, or in therapy when we can get it out with our words and have someone else be a witness to that. So in regards to journaling, you may have a strategy that works, or you may feel like, I don't know what I'm doing. I've got a piece of paper and a pencil in front of me, and what am I supposed to do? What does this even look like? So for some people, for me, a lot of my journaling were letters to God. It was like me talking to God. So it actually broke down some of those barriers when I felt like I was all alone and I couldn't. What am I supposed to do? Say, hey, God. So then I could write it down and I could just say, I know you know this, but I'm telling you anyways. And so I would just make lists to God. And sometimes it is just lists, and other times it's just random. Sometimes it can be journal prompts, questions, which I've included in your journal, some questions to kind of prompt and guide thinking to help reveal certain things. Another really practical way that we can invite God into our pain is by doing just that. Inviting Him in, crying out to Him with our words, telling Him, I can't do this on my own. I need you to step in. And that may look like, I don't know what I need, God. I trust you to enter into this with me, um, and asking for that guidance and just asking Him and inviting Him physically into your painful situation. Another practical way that we can invite God into pain is really by focusing on His promises and His word, making a habit of poring over it. I included in your journal some verses that are my favorites to meditate on and to really get to the bottom of God's character and His nature and who he is to me and who I am to Him. Um, Another practical way that we can invite God into our pain is to evaluate our beliefs, as we were talking about earlier. Check them against what God says. Are they true? Are other actions, your past mistakes, your current pain defining you? I would challenge you to seek truth in that, evaluate those things, challenge those thoughts. Use your journal to assess the thought and feeling connection, and figure out if you're being brought down by these thoughts and these feelings. And then lastly, I say reach out to your community, and if you don't have one, get one. Collide is a great community of women who long to support each other. Do you have friends or family? Um, People who love you, people who know you, people who are committed to listening to you and supporting you, people who will guide you toward healing, and support you in your healing, a professional counselor, perhaps, someone who you can take this to and get some support and validation and guidance in this. So, as you're sitting across from me today, I know there's probably a lot of questions and wondering, like, did this story get wrapped up? Does it have a beautiful bow on it? And is it now worthy of telling? And I just want to validate that I still battle. I still battle every day with certain aspects of my story that are still painful. I'm forever changed by it. And I want to acknowledge that in your pain, there may be circumstances that you will forever carry with you. And I think of it like scars, that it's not a gaping wound, and one day it won't be a gaping wound anymore. God has healed so many places in me, but I still have scars. Um, and like I said, I'm forever changed. But the difference is, I think I have something that I didn't have before, and it is a peace to know that whatever storm enters my life, it does shake me, but I don't lose a sense of reality anymore like I did. I have this sense of peace that I know where I can turn. And I know that the storm may not be calmed, but I'll have someone to sit in it with me. Um, and I also I feel like a gift now, that when I'm walking around and I see pain in women's eyes, like I can tell, and I can tell if there has been a wound, and I can understand and I can see it in a whole new light because I've experienced it myself. And that is the part of the story it is beautiful, and it is a story worth sharing, just like your story. It's worth sharing. I don't know the nature of your pain, but I do know that you're worthy and that you're valuable and that your story is worth telling. And I believe that God is calling you to invite Him into your pain, that this is your opportunity to take that risk and to be in a place where you can invite Him in and say, I can't do this on my own anymore, God, and I'm ready for the healing that you have for me so that I can be all you intended me to be.